I beat my first Zelda game, The Legend of Zelda, Link's Awakening. Hi everyone, Billy here, Current Kick Games. Yeah, I beat my first Zelda game ever. Now, it's not the first Zelda game I ever played. I'll be frank about that. I played about 50 hours of Breath of the Wild, loving my time with it. I don't know why I never finished it. Some other game probably popped up, and 50 hours is a lot to commit to one game, so it is what it is. I do plan on replaying it, probably to the end, before Breath of the Wild 2, which was just recently delayed. And Link's Awakening, it's a very special game, and I'm very glad that I played this one first before I moved on to others. I had this weird realization after playing Genshin Impact for a year, basically being like the only game I played for a year. I wanted to play games and beat them, complete them, get through a bunch. Playing one game for a whole year was a weird thing. I enjoyed it, but I really felt like I was missing out. And I've just been going back and playing shorter games maybe and completing them, getting the full experience. And Link's Awakening was really unlike anything I've ever played before. The whole system, and I want to almost say Metroidvania-esque, but I know Zelda predates Metroidvania games, so it's just an action-adventure game with puzzle elements, I guess. The way that you have to actually explore this world, unlock it, go through dungeons, get a new ability or item so you can continue. And then as you keep unlocking these new items and abilities, you can go back and find secrets or better upgrades. And yeah, I didn't complete the game in the sense that I 100%ed it. I didn't get all of the seashells, and I probably missed out on a couple things here and there, but I'm fine with that. I put about 25 hours into it. I made a point to not use a walkthrough for as much as the game as possible, and I have to say that in the final dungeon and the final boss, there's like 5 different bosses you have to fight at the very end. I wound up looking up a walkthrough to get through those because I was spending like 2 nights. Like I would play this game at night while watching Netflix or whatever, a movie, and I would play it for about an hour or 2 every night until I beat it. It was like 2 or 3 nights in a row walking around the dungeon, the final dungeon, not knowing what I missed to complete it, to get to the next section. So I just looked up a walkthrough. It is what it is. It didn't really ruin my experience, but sticking to that for the majority of the game, not looking up a walkthrough, running around and finding new things and figuring out was just so rewarding. It's really, really cool. And it helps that the game, the remake, looks amazing. It helps that the game plays great. It took a little while to get used to swapping items on the face buttons. So you have a sword attack, and I always left jump. So that was basically taking one spot away at all times. So I always had jump there, so I would swap out my other weapon. So maybe I limited myself with some combos a little bit, but wow, what a great game, and just really fun. I think I might have seen that this is considered one of the easier Zelda games, but whatever. I wanted to play this first. I still want to stick with the isometric old school Zeldas for a little bit before I jump into 3D. I have some weird nostalgia going on. Playing this, and I'm also playing Aria of Sorrow, the Castlevania collection. From here, I'm probably going to go to A Link to the Past, followed by A Link Between Worlds. I think that's my next section of Zelda that I'm going to hit. But Link's Awakening just opened the world of video games to me. I put out a video on Tunic. I was playing that. I meant to make this video last week because I beat this game about a week and a half ago. But I started playing Tunic because I was looking for a more modern version of something that would be similar to Link's Awakening, a Zelda clone, basically. And I have Game Pass, and Tunic came out, and I've been literally blown away. And I'm just taking in all I can for these isometric action-adventure games in the style of Zelda, and they're just something I never thought I'd be into. It's kind of crazy. And I'm almost done with that game. I'm nearly finished. So if you have more recommendations for these types of games that I should look into, please give it to me. I think Death's Door is another one I tried a little bit and liked. I've had a copy of 3D Dot Game Heroes for a very long time that I want to check out. It's just funny how you kind of choose a side when you're a kid. Like, I was very stubborn. I'm like, nah, Zelda games suck, and just never played one. I can only imagine if I played this game on my original Game Boy, how that would have changed the trajectory of my video game likes and dislikes. I call myself a Final Fantasy fan. I really felt for a very long time that I was a JRPG fan. But whenever I would try them out, I never really had that same experience that Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, Anthology, 5, and 6. gave me. It's like I've been searching for another one of those magical RPGs for a long time, and I probably should have just moved on and tried out a different genre. I probably just should have moved over to Zelda and played them so I can experience it. So I'm just excited that like I opened a whole new world to myself. So, but yeah, I'm coming in as a Final Fantasy fan. I say that because I had a Super Nintendo back in the day, a Super Nintendo, a Game Boy, but the Zelda games weren't on my radar at all. I skipped over Nintendo NES. Born in 87, my parents waited to get me a game console into the Super Nintendo, which is fine. But all my friends at that point seemed to have Sega. So it was all Sonic the Hedgehog, beat-em-ups and brawlers. So Zelda was really off my radar. And at that point in time, it was interesting. I mean, I'm a kid at this point, right? So I'm getting games for my birthday and for Christmas. Maybe I asked for them. I don't really remember. I feel like I didn't, because a lot of times I get like a bowling game or a war game or a Power Rangers game. And I don't know what these are. Very rarely did I have a Game Pro magazine. I remember having some back issues actually in our elementary school library that I would take out and take home for a few days, look through and be like, oh, these look cool, but I don't have any money. I can't buy them. And I remember at least 2 times going to stores with my dad to pick out games for my birthday, maybe Christmas. I remember you're basically picking games based off what the box looked like at that point. So I have no idea how reviews of this game are, what kind of game they even are. Few of them I remember buying were, okay, one time I remember very distinctly being at PC Richards & Son, which is I think it's just an East Coast only store that's still around. But I love Terminator, and I picked RoboCop versus the Terminator, and that is not a good game. It's extremely hard. I never beat it. I don't think it's known to be a good game. It had a pretty sick box, though. It had like a plastic cover. What else? I remember being at Toys R Us once, I think for my birthday. My dad telling me I have a limit and, pick out one game, and then going there and realizing that, holy crap, like some of these games are like $70, $100 plus. I think that was like Zelda games and Final Fantasy games. So I think my dad gave me a spending limit saying you can buy one of these games. It's like $60. And I remember going over and be like, oh, some of these are cheaper. Can I get 2? And he's like, yeah, as long as you adds up to this, get 2. That's fine. I think I picked Super Battle Tank, War in the Gulf, and like a bowling game. I don't know. Oh no, it was that Simpsons game, Bart's Nightmare, I think it was. Yeah, Bart's Nightmare and War in the Gulf. I don't know. The Bart game was fine, I guess. But yeah, Zelda completely off my radar. Later on, I made a decision that kind of defined my gaming career with PlayStation. I was leaning toward Nintendo 64 because my friend had one. I remember very distinctly showing my dad once again, I'm trying to decide if I want to get N64 or PlayStation, and like showing him magazines, and he clearly like didn't care at all. But my one friend in school kept showing me this magazine with Final Fantasy VII in it, telling me it's going to be this amazing game. You need to get a PlayStation for it. Time I had no idea what like an RPG was, a JRPG especially. I guess I had played Pokemon, but to me that's not really a role-playing game, I guess, at that point. It was just Pokemon Blue. And I wound up choosing PlayStation, so once again skipping over Zelda. I do remember watching my friend play Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask a little bit, but puzzly games wasn't really my thing. I kind of looked down upon it, basically comparing it to Final Fantasy VII and other JRPGs that I would get into, being like, this barely has a story. I don't want to play this game. And it wasn't until late in the GameCube life cycle that I actually finally bought and played a Zelda. It was probably around 2006 that I bought a Nintendo GameCube from a GameStop. They were like starting to try to clear them out, basically. I remember buying a brand new Platinum GameCube, I think for like $60. Walked out of there with Super Smash Bros. Melee, Super Monkey Ball, and The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker. And I gave it a fair shot. It was the whole Zelda thing really actually worked for me. I was really intrigued by it, and I guess I didn't play it as much as I thought back then. I got up to the Forsaken Fortress, I think, which is like very, very early on, and I remember running around the fortress for like an hour or two, not knowing what to do, where to go, and I just gave up. I said nope and moved on to something else. And nowadays it's so easy to just throw up a YouTube walkthrough and figure out what to do, but 2006, it wasn't that easy. I figured it was more text walkthroughs you would be looking at, and I had no patience for that. So fast forward to me getting a Switch a few years back and wanting to actually play The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, and I actually did fall in love with that game, putting about 50 hours into it. Never actually beat it. I plan to go back and replay it or beat it before the recently announced delay for Breath of the Wild 2, but I'd like to beat it or replay it before then. I do like it. 50 hours is a lot to commit to a game, so I feel like I got most of the experience out of it. But I know that's not a very traditional Zelda game at all, and for some reason, when the Switch remake of The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening was announced, I couldn't get it out of my head. I was very intrigued. So even though I went against my friend who was a huge Zelda fan, his recommendation was to skip it because he doesn't like the old school isometric Zeldas, I bought it anyway, and wow, that was a big story about how I got to where I am now. But let me know what your first Zelda was, and where do you think I should go from here? Since I loved Link's Awakening so much, like I said, I want to go to the Link to the Past, and then A Link Between Worlds. But maybe I should try out Wind Waker. I know people seem to be hate or love on Skyward Sword. Luckily, I have copies of all of these games. But I have a copy of A Link Between Worlds on, 3DS? I have a copy of Wind Waker HD. I have Twilight Princess HD. I have Ocarina of Time on DS or 3DS, whatever it was. So I think I have Majora's Mask. I'm not sure if I do. But so yeah, that's my personal experience beating my first Zelda game. Make sure to do the like and subscribe thing for more video game content, and I'll see you soon.